What I would like you to do is imagine that you are on a beautiful tropical island in the South Seas. You've finally taken a vacation, the vacation that you've owed yourself forever. You finally decided to go, and there you are on this incredibly gorgeous, beautiful day, walking along this white sand beach with turquoise water, palm trees on one side, and then you see walking towards you, coming this way, is a local islander. And this person is walking towards you. And now this is a very, very friendly island, keep in mind, but it's important also to keep in mind that this is an island where they do not speak English. In fact, on this island, they don't speak any language that you speak. Now, what you notice is that this local islander is carrying this really weird little purple fruit. But this, again, is a very friendly island, and as the local islander comes up to you, they're eating this fruit, and they kind of say, nod hello, and they indicate that they've got another one of these purple fruit, and they suggest that maybe you might want to take a bite. And again, you're on vacation, what else are you going to do? Why not? So you take this purple fruit and you take a bite. Y'all with me on this visualization exercise so far? And you taste this purple fruit and you say, wow, that's pretty good. It tastes like an apple, only sweeter. And it's interesting because an apple is my favorite fruit back home. So I would like to reciprocate. This local islander has given me their fruit. I want to reciprocate and share them something about an apple, which is my favorite fruit. Now think about the limitations I have, though, to communicate this. I can't speak to this person because we don't have any spoken language in common. There are no apples or anything around that look like apples, but I'm very clever because in the back of my back pocket, I have some napkins from the resort that I'm staying on the other side of the island, and I happen to have a pen. And so what I do is I say, I'm going to draw the apple for this islander. And the first thing you do is you say, okay, how would I draw an apple? Well, what's a nice simple way to draw an apple? And I might just draw something like that. I say, okay, but that doesn't make any sense. The person's not going to be able to understand that. It's way too simple. There are a lot of trees around here. Maybe what I should really do is draw a picture that indicates that apples grow on trees, and in fact, they actually normally grow in orchards where there's lots of trees. So maybe a picture that's a little bit more elaborate. And I'll say, well, no, that's not really going to make any much sense. What I really need to do is focus on sort of the qualitative apple aspects of what makes an apple really an apple. So maybe I can go in here and show the fact that an apple's kind of red and it's round. And what are the qualities that really make an apple an apple? It's got a little reflection on it. Doesn't that look like a lovely apple? And it's got the little stem there. And I think that's a beautiful qualitative picture of an apple. But that doesn't tell me anything about the saying we have that an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Now, why does an apple a day keep the doctor away? Well, maybe we need to show our apple from a more quantitative perspective. And what would be a way that you could show an apple from a quantitative perspective? Well, what would happen if we mapped out our apple on a chart of U.S. recommended daily allowances of vitamin C and, say, folic acid and vitamin E. And what we'd find out is that from 100% down to 0%, an apple a day does give us about 100% of what we need in vitamin C. It doesn't give us very much vitamin E, but it gives us a pretty good amount of malic acid as well. So they've got a nice quantitative view, and I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, I'm talking to this island. That's not going to make any sense to them. What I really need to do is I really need to show them why I love apples so much. What is the vision of an apple in its most perfect form? What is the vision that we want to achieve with our apple? Does anybody have an idea? Does anybody have any suggestion of how we might draw the vision of a perfect apple? Eating one? Okay. I'm going to do very often. I'm going to take a different tack. Very often, what I find when I ask this question is people, they think for a minute and they say, "Oh, apple pie." An apple in its most perfect form is an apple pie. So what I could draw for my islander is I could draw a nice little apple pie. And it's got nice little scent lines coming off it like that. And I'd say, that doesn't make any sense. The person's not going to understand what I'm talking about this vision. What I really need to show is how do you make an apple pie? And the way that you make an apple pie is you start out with an apple, and you take a little knife, and you slice the apple up, and then you make a crust, and then you put the crust in a pan, and you put all these things together, and then you put it in the oven at 350 degrees, for 45 minutes or so, I guess, and then after it's cooked, then you put it on the windowsill and let it cool. And that's the way you go about. And you say, well, that's not going to make any sense. I've gotten way off track here. And there is a punchline. We're almost done. You know, what I could do is, what I probably should do since I'm describing an apple is I should probably spend some time really going into the details, almost the scientific details of the apple all by itself. And you know, it's got a kind of a skin on it, and it's got a certain, and you know how an apple's got this interesting difference in sort of the flesh in here, and then it's got its seeds in the middle. I could actually make kind of a really nicely detailed, super detailed sort of schematic of the apple. I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. The person's never seen an apple before. What I really need to do is show the apple in comparison to maybe some other fruits that they are familiar with. You know, and maybe let's make kind of a pineapple here. So what I really want to do is make a comparison. In fact, here's that crazy purple fruit that they were eating from the beginning. And I'd say, my goodness, where am I going with this? Because I've got so many. What I really want to show is, you know, I want to show how an apple can change. And so if my apple started like this is what change might look like. This is what my apple is going to look like when it's done. But then, you know, the status quo of my apple is kind of back to where I started again. And, you know, thankfully, this exercise is done. Now, here's what we've just done. This is an exercise that represents the 5 twists on the corkscrew. Things are getting real metaphorical here. I call this the squid exercise, and the reason is this. What we've just done is we have literally activated, in this process, we have literally activated every corner of our mind's eye. You've heard about right brain and left brain. Do people know about this, the concept that our right brain and our left hemispheres of our neocortex process information differently? By going through this exercise, we have not only activated all of our centers on our right brain, we've also activated all of our centers on our left brain. Now, what am I talking about? I mean this. We drew a simple picture of an apple. We drew an elaborate picture of an apple. We drew a qualitative picture of an apple. We drew a quantitative picture of an apple. We drew a visionary picture of an apple. And we drew an execution-oriented picture of an apple. We drew an individual, detailed view of our apple. And we drew a comparison of our apple. Then we drew a changed version of our apple, delta, representing change. And we drew, again, our status quo. Now, what all that means when we add it all together is the 5 letters, the squid. I need this because I have a terrible memory. And I need to be able to recall what are the questions that I need to ask myself when I have an idea in mind. And I came up with this silly little mnemonic, which really sticks because it's so weird, which is the squid. Now, it's kind of a classic squid because we have V for vision. But the idea is, of course, when you have an idea in mind, there are 2 ways to use this squid tool. One of them is that when you have an idea in mind, something in your mind's eye, think about the squid exercise as kind of an applied way to make your imagination really kick in and start to think about different things. And so by simply virtue of the fact of taking your original idea, it could be anything. It could be an apple, it could be a car, it doesn't matter. It's a concept, it's a business idea. And force yourself to come up with a simple view of that, and an elaborate view, and a qualitative view, and a quantitative view, and a visionary view, and so on. And you can't help it. By the time you're done, you will have come up with a whole bunch of ideas about that single idea that you started out with that you never would have come up with had you not gone through the exercise. I mean, it is really, if you try it sometime, it's this crazy experience where you can literally, as you're asking, what's the difference between a qualitative view and an individual view, you will feel the gears in your mind shifting. You will feel stripping of gears in your mind as you shift from one way of thinking about something to the next way of thinking about it. Now, the second thing, and this is what's really interesting about this squid exercise as well. You know, the most important part about creating these pictures is not only to help us come up with our good ideas, but remember the whole point here was we wanted to explain our apple to this local islander. A really fascinating thing happens when you've got this idea in mind. Put yourself in the shoes of the person that you're going to be showing it to. And ask yourself, which of these views is going to be most interesting to my audience? And the example I'd like to give is this. Let's say you and your team have got a really great concept for a new product. And somehow through the grapevine, the CEO of your company has heard about this and invites you into their room and says, listen, I'm in the process of doing my budgeting right now. I've heard that you've got a great idea. You've got 5 minutes to explain to me what your idea is about. Now ask yourself, do you want to make an elaborate, quantitative, execution-oriented comparison for your CEO? No. What you want to be able to do is make something which is very simple, which is very qualitative, which is visionary, which is probably individual, and more likely than not shows change. And more likely than that, that is probably going to be a simple drawing like a Venn diagram or something. But now let's say that the CEO says, great, I love it, you're funded. Go talk to the head of the project management group to figure out how you're going to allocate your resources and how you're going to build it. Not my problem, CEO. Go talk to the head of product development. Now, when you go talk to the head of the product development and say, we've just gotten our $5 million, we're going to be working on our product. The head of project development is not going to want a simple, qualitative, visionary vision. What they want to know is, how are we going to execute this thing? They want to know quantitatively, what are we going to do and how many people is it going to take and how long is it going to take to do it. Point being, it's a very different picture of the same apple.